welcome to another AIC project. So my Suzuki GN125 is still at the shop. It's been there for a week. They've been super busy, haven't been able to finish working on it. It didn't need much tires and just a once over, but I guess they had a massive backlog, and with the holiday and everything we just had, it's still in the shop. So I got bored and bought another project bike. So 14 years ago, I've been married for 15 years. And when my wife and I got married, she was told she was never going to be able to have children. And so at the time, I was riding a motorcycle and I had my 1970 Ford F100 single cab pickup truck. And she wanted a motorcycle. She grew up around him. Her dad was in a motorcycle club gang. And so she literally grew up with a Harley in her living room. And so she really wanted her own motorcycle. And so I searched around and found one for her. And it was a 1986 Honda Rebel 250 Limited Gold Edition. And she loved that bike. And she also had a 1974 Volkswagen Super Beetle that I did up for her. Anyways, about 7 months after we bought her that bike, she fell ill with this terrible disease called pregnancy that wasn't ever supposed to happen to her. And so we ended up selling the bikes, the truck, the Bug, and got more sensible family vehicles. And ever since then, my wife has been pining for her Rebel. And I actually saw her exact Rebel for sale about 5 years after we sold it on Craigslist. And I messaged him like, I don't care what it costs, I want the bike. And he never responded to me. And that ad just sat for months. And I messaged multiple times. As a Craigslist ad. I messaged multiple times. Never heard back. And I haven't seen one for sale locally since. Now I've seen it for sale through like Cycle Trader stuff for ridiculous, like $10,000 price. Like I don't think they ever sold for that price. But I was actually talking to my niece, who really wants to get a motorcycle, and she wants a Victory, was it an 8-ball or Highball, whatever it is, the 109cc monster cruiser. She's 13. I'm like, you're ridiculous. If you want to learn to ride, have your grandparents buy you something like this. Anyways, on my wife's side, they're kind of crazy. Anyways, and so I was looking. She doesn't live in the same state as me, but I was looking just to show examples of motorcycles. And long story short, I found this about almost 4 hours away from me. And it is another 1986 Honda Rebel limited edition. It's not quite the same that my wife had. The gold accents on like the springs and the cylinder heads are there, but the graphics are similar, but not quite the same. But it's as close as I possibly can get. And my wife is thrilled. Now this bike almost needs more work than the last bike. Even though it actually runs, I have the keys, and it came with a title. The carbs are just pissing gasoline out of it. Is it just one? I don't even know. I'm so tired. I drove like 10 hours today. I think it's just one carb. Anyways, the carb is pissing gasoline everywhere. I think I said oil, but it's pissing gasoline. I think it's just the floats are stuck. When you put ethanol fuel in these things, they're not meant for fuel with ethanol in it. It's not ethanol fuel, but fuel with, we have up to 15% here in Arizona, and it's shit stuff. It's terrible fuel, and I hate that they require it. And you can't buy pure gasoline in this state anymore. But it runs pretty well. The idle is way too high. I need to adjust the idle on it. Tires are good on it, but you can see like we got the floppy lights, more floppy lights. But one thing this has that the other one doesn't really is it has a fair amount of rust. This bike was, I guess, originally in Washington State, and they have more rust there. I can't even see in that sight glass for the brake fluid. But this is 3 years newer than the other one, but it is a bit different in that it is a sturdier bike, I guess. It has a front brake that is a disc, single disc, versus drum up front and in the back. It has twice the horsepower, twice the cylinders, twice the uh, fuel capacity. Unfortunately, like the seats ripped. That's to be expected, but like the front forks are leaking really bad, and it kind of made it worse coming back from my trip because I was on I-40 in Arizona, and that road is just awful. And I strapped the bike down as best as I could. It didn't tip over anything, but that road, even going, I was going anywhere from 10 to 15 miles an hour slower than the speed limit. But that road was so rough, I was just bouncing. I had it in a U-Haul trailer, and that might have been a mistake, but I was out there by myself, and I was buying it from a guy in his 80s, and you know, I didn't want to worry about trying to get it up into the back of my truck by myself. So that's why I rented a U-Haul trailer with a ramp trailer, and I think it was just so bouncy that it blew out the seals on the front forks. So I'm gonna have to rebuild those, fix up the rust. Tank has no dents in it that I can tell. Like, it's a little scratched up, but it, you know, a lot of times you'll have a big old dent right here from falling over the mirror hitting the tank. Doesn't have that. It needs mirrors. But yeah, so my wife's super excited to have it. I don't know how much she's actually going to ride it. It'll probably be more my bike than her bike. But yeah, no, it'll be a great bike. I know a lot of people think that a 250 is too small for them, but where I live, most of the speed limits are anywhere from 15 miles an hour to 35 miles an hour. I'm not going on a big long highway cruise on these. You know, the most I do is like the main drag. I live in a town with 3 stop lights. Like, I don't live in a big town anymore. And so we have 3 stoplights, and the main drag is 45 miles an hour. So 250cc is more than sufficient to put around town, get around places. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be using it for. I think it looks amazing. The graphics on here are just killer. They sparkle and look great. Definitely needs a lot of cleanup. Needs some loving, but yeah, we'll definitely be enjoying it. I'll go grab the key and start it up for you. All right, so I don't have the gas on. I'll just turn on for a second just to get a little fuel running down that line a little bit. Let's see. Maybe it won't leak. It'll probably leak once the fuel gets in there. All right. It's in neutral, has maybe 20,000 miles on it, but of course the speedo cable is functional. Let's go ahead and start it up. You can hear choke's not engaged. Oh. That's definitely idling too high. Gotta get that addressed for sure. There's too much slack in the chain as well. That's pretty sloppy, I think. Shut that off. There we go. So yeah, it needs some love. Absolutely needs some love, but I think we'll be able to give it to it without too much problem. One thing about this bike versus the Suzuki is the parts for this bike are a lot cheaper and more readily available here in the US, simply because this bike was made in the US, or made for the US market, up until what, 2014, 2016, something like that. Real recently. So They changed very little, and so like the seats are like 40 bucks, and that speedo cable's like 15, and you know, these I can get all four lights. So for the Suzuki, one light was $50. I can get all four lights Honda branded for $25. So just little things like that will make it a lot easier to build this bike. I'm thinking of throwing out a GoFundMe. If you want to throw a few dollars at this project and help me build it for my wife, I would appreciate that. I'm thinking like less than 500 bucks for everything it needs at this point. Anyways, thank you for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.